13. 13 is the number of races in a GNCC season, a present-day GNCC season. 13 times 30 is a lot of races. And our guest today has a career that spans over 30 years in the sport. That's a world worth examining. That's a story worth telling. And that's what we're going to do today. My name's Griff Cotter, and this is One Call with Griff, brought to you by Service 360. We are a home services company based out of Reading, Pennsylvania, and Berks County. We specialize in electric, HVAC, plumbing, and anything that you need done around your home or business. I promise you we have a solution for that. With that being said, it is an honor to welcome the first guest on One Call. He is a former professional XC1 ATV pro athlete and now is a huge figure in the sport of GNCC racing, Mr. Johnny Gallagher. Johnny, welcome to One Call.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Definitely cool opportunity to come on here and talk to you a little bit about life and business, and always have good conversations, so why not record it and let some people have a little insight into what it is that we're talking about when they see us at the races.
To those of you that don't know, Johnny is a good friend of mine. Known him for a couple years now. Putting it lightly, he's a staple in the sport of GNCC. Like I said on the previous episode, GNCC is the Grand National Cross Country Series. It's a very large off-road ATV and motorcycle racing series based on the East Coast. It's one of the biggest and baddest series that the country has to offer, and even in the world for that matter. And Johnny is right smack dab at the heart of it.
Yeah, I've been involved in off-road racing, ATV racing, specifically GNCC and even the predecessor to GNCC, the Weisco 100 Miler Series, since the mid-1980s. Yes, I am old. Griff, I don't even believe you were born back then, but yeah, I started going to the 100 Miler Series races back in like 1983. The series itself started with the Blackwater 100 in 1975. So I'd been 5 years old when I started going to GNCC races. Again, at that time they were called the Weisco 100 Miler Series. So here we are, 43 years later, 48 years old. Had a 41-year racing career, 28 years professionally in the GNCC series, and raced, in addition to the GNCC, I've raced all over the world. Raced ATVs on several different continents. I don't even know how many countries. I lost track, and it's been my life since essentially I realized how amazing motorsports was. And at a very young age, like I said, my dad raced. That was my catalyst for starting to go to the races. My dad raced even before I was born. I started racing when I was 5, and it's really honestly, I don't know any other way to say it than it's consumed my life in the best way possible over the last 43 years. And yeah, 41 years racing, 28 as a GNCC XC1 Pro. I even predate the class name XC1. It used to be called the AA class, and retired from full-time professional racing at the end of 2022. I am now a brand ambassador for Yamaha Motor Corporation, and a Blue Crew brand ambassador as well, which is a community organization. When I say community organization, Yamaha owners can join an organization called Blue Crew. They get all kinds of perks and everything from contingency to events that they're able to attend free of charge, and it just creates a community around the Yamaha brand. I've been an ambassador for Blue Crew since the end of 2022 when I retired, and I'm also the manager of off-road brands for Greenball Tires. We have a light truck division, trailer division, and power sports division that is GBC Tires. Been the brand manager for them since I retired in 2022, and have been working with Greenball since 2009. So yeah, about 17 years now working with Greenball. So been very fortunate to have a lot of opportunities in the power sports industry that all essentially evolved from my racing and my involvement with GNCC and ATV racing.
Man, what a life. What a world to live in. I'm going to challenge you here a little bit. Talking to someone that's never even heard of the series, heard of that, discipline of racing, what does a world look like? What does your world look like that you live in? Describe that for us.
So off-road racing for motorcycles and ATVs is, in the world that I live in, it's everything. But in the grand scope of the world that we all live in, obviously it's a relatively small, family-driven and oriented activity. Travel all over depending on what series you're racing, but GNCC specifically travels all over the East Coast of the United States. As you pointed out at the opener to the show, 13 rounds is the current schedule. It wasn't always 13, but 13 rounds per year with motorcycle, ATV, e-bike, and even stay-sick races, little bicycles with little electric motors that race on Friday night. Griff, I know that one's near and dear to your heart. You've been a big part of growing that side of GNCC with racers. Starting on the stay-sicks at 2 years old, we have, youth classes on both motorcycle and ATV, micro even for riders starting at 4 to 5 years of age, all the way up through amateur riders. You have riders and families that are trying to essentially grow through the sport, whether it be to just advance through the ranks from, beginner classes to intermediate classes to advanced classes to semi-professional classes, and then ultimately on Saturday there is the XC1 ATV Pro class, and on Sunday the XC1 motorcycle class that race in the afternoon race, and it's arguably the best off-road riders in the world, some of the best off-road riders in the world, and they can be 13 times a year all over the East Coast. But on a grander, more kind of 30,000 foot view, off-road racing for motorcycles and ATVs, there's regional series all around the country. There's international series that run over in Europe. There's series in pretty much every part of the world where people race motorcycles and ATVs competitively, and that's pretty much the world I've lived in since I was 5 years old. So it's provided me a ton of opportunities to travel, to meet new people, to grow as an individual more than just as a racer. Obviously, my professional career spanned 28 years, something I'm very proud of, but I think for me the bigger picture is really the opportunities that I've been provided from racing, specifically GNCC, but off-road racing in general, and the partners that I've made along the way, the friends I've made along the way, and the travel experiences and relationships I've built along the way.
I want to get a little bit more granular here, just shooting from the hip. How much does your quad weigh?
420 pounds, give or take, is what most race quads, sport ATVs. Obviously, there's utility ATVs, which are much heavier, that do race as well. But a Yamaha YFZ 450, which I raced from 2009 to when I retired at the end of 2022, in full race trim, right around 420 pounds.
Before you had mud.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story in and of itself. Many years ago at the John Penton GNCC, we actually weighed, at the time I wasn't racing for Yamaha, I was racing a Suzuki Z400, and we weighed the machine after the race. 960 pounds was what the machine weighed after the race was over, and that was a little bit heavier machine. It was around 450, but it had more than doubled in weight. It was definitely pretty insane.
That's a big boy. Okay, and to put things in perspective, you say, I think I used it in last episode, but I said the average GNCC track is right around 13 miles, right? Your lap times, what do they shoot for? Half hour, 25 minutes?
Generally in the 30-minute range is what they're shooting for. They tend, depending on the property, depending on the weather conditions, depending on a lot of different factors, the laps are anywhere from the low to mid-20s up to right around 30 minutes. Generally not longer than 30-minute lap times.
I asked because I want to get an idea of the speed in which you guys are operating these machines.
There's a pretty wide range, just depending on the layout of the course, the terrain, and the conditions. You're running anywhere from virtually walking speed in some of the tighter sections of the racetrack, on a sport quad or even a utility quad. Generally speaking, those machines are right around 50 inches wide. And the trees usually, depending in some of the tighter sections, are about 51 inches wide. So you're really having to kind of thread the needle through some of those sections, and you can be going very slow by perspective. But in the faster sections of racetrack, the more open sections, straightaways, some of the southern rounds where it's more open. I have also raced out west where you're racing in the desert, and it's basically as fast as your machine will go. It all just depends on gearing, bike setup, all that kind of stuff. But it's not uncommon for us to run upwards of 70 mile an hour in some of the faster sections of racetrack on a setup that's meant to also go down and run 5 to 8 miles an hour in some of the slower sections. So in a full race trim, if you were racing out west, I've ridden ATVs that'll run 85, 90 miles an hour in the faster sections of racetrack.
So you're moving.
Oh yeah.
I asked this to just try to put into perspective, and you're getting paid to do this. This is your job. Like, or not anymore, but this was once your job, to ride this 400-pound machine as fast as you could through some of the gnarliest terrain, and at some of the fastest speeds that said machine would let you take it. That's the kind of perspective that I'm trying to provide here, for our audience. This is a very unique, a very niche career that you've leveraged from being an athlete, and you've transitioned over to now just a staple in the industry as a whole. And man, I think it's very impressive, and such a unique world to let people look into, especially those that have never even heard about what we do.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, when I started racing and even when I started riding, like, I never could have dreamt where the road would lead. Just loved ATVs. My dad raced motorcycles. My mom thought that motorcycles were too dangerous, so in her infinite wisdom and my dad's negotiating skills at the time convinced her that three-wheelers were safer, which we now know definitely not the case. But I actually started out on a Honda ATC 70 three-wheeler, which I got for my 5th birthday. So I started racing very soon after, just some local races, and at the time there wasn't really a national youth racing series, but growing up in Northeast Ohio, there was an organization called CRA, Competition Riders of America. They ran about 40 races a year. I started off just doing a few when I was 5. I think around the time I was 7, started running the full series, kind of upgrading machines as we went. I was on a three-wheeler until I was, I want to say probably 10 or 11, when Suzuki came out with the LT80, one of the first competitive youth ATVs. Got one of those in 1987, so actually I guess it would have been 9. I was a little younger than I thought. Started racing that right away, and then in 1989, Big Dave and Rita Coombs decided to start doing some youth races at the Grand National Cross Country GNCC Series. My dad was already racing the motorcycle there, so it just made sense for me to go and see how I could stack up. I was, doing a lot of winning locally, and won the first ever youth GNCC ATV championship in, I honestly can't remember if it was 1989 or 1990. I would have to go back and look at the trophies, but I think it was 1990 was the first full season, and I was 12 years old racing, and there's been some interesting video clips pop up here recently from some interviews with Big Dave after the races, and even John Ayers on the podium, both very large figures in GNCC and off-road racing back in the late 80s and early 90s. Big Dave obviously started GNCC, and it was just kind of off from there. Then I was really bit by the bug, as if I hadn't already been. Another interesting note, which anybody who is a GNCC fan that is familiar with the series might find unique. The first race that I raced in GNCC was the Sand Flea in, I guess it was 1990, in South Carolina, I believe. It was either North or South Carolina. But it was the Sand Flea, and I won my race. And then the next day, the gentleman who won the pro motorcycle race, I caught his goggles when he came across the finish line and threw them. A gentleman by the name of Jeff Russell. So, wow. Yep, still have those goggles somewhere. Have attempted to get them back to him, but I have to find them over at my mom's house. I think they're in a milk crate in the basement, part of the memorabilia. But yeah, that started my love affair with GNCC, and really never stopped. I think I've been to almost every race since those races in 1989, 90, and even before that. Like I said, my dad was racing the senior age classes in GNCC in the Weisco 100-miler series before that, so I was at most of those races unless school conflicted or something like that. So I don't know how many off-road races in general I've attended. It's well into the thousands, but it's been my life for the last 43 years, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
I don't care, what you're doing, how you're doing it. If you're doing anything 1,000 times in your life, you're doing something, and that's impressive. I got to provide a little context here. Jeff Russell was part of that leadership that I talked about, a huge part of that leadership that I talked about in episode number 1. So he was my boss, and now is a really close friend of Johnny. And just a moment, what would have been a really cool moment in your life has turned into now a relationship years later. And I think that speaks a lot to the culture of GNCC racing. I spoke about it. We're family. We have to be a family. There's so many things that we come into contact with at the races. So many struggles that can pop up, and just the lifestyle in general. You need people. You need good people in your corner. You need a good family around you, whether you're racing, whether you're traveling in between the events, or even there on site. A lot can happen, and it's important to note that people from the GNCC community, whether you're working there or racing there, are some of the best people you ever meet in the world. But yeah, so I think we've provided some pretty great context about who you are, the world you come from. There are 3 things really that I admire about you, man. Number 1 is your durability and your perseverance. That you've got a 28-year plus pro career and a overall racing career that spans over 40 years. You're a durable son of a gun. We just talked about going 80 miles an hour on a 500 plus pound machine, and you did that for 40 years. Okay, I remember when you retired. I don't know why my brain works in crazy ways, but to me, your 40 plus year racing career is more impressive to me than LeBron's 20 plus year, whatever he's at now, in the NBA, because what you guys do is gnarly. Okay. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about your consistency. I know, in that 28-year pro career, you have 1 win, and that's way more wins. That's 100% more wins than I have. And you just kept coming back. You kept coming back. You kept showing up. How many top 10s do you have in that time?
That is a number I could probably calculate. I was fairly consistently in the top 10 overall. Throughout the entirety of my pro career, and actually I had a few top 10 overalls as an amateur. My last year when I was racing 250A back in the day as a 16-year-old, had some top 10 overalls. So I showed a lot of promise when I was young. But yeah, I mean, to your point, the durability, as you're saying it, or the tenacity, was something that I definitely developed over the years, because to be honest, when I was younger, I wasn't really the toughest kid. I think I was blessed with some ability as far as riding an ATV and just growing up around it. I think it came pretty easily to me. I was always able to be fast, but I wasn't the toughest definitely wasn't the toughest nail in the construction site. I was a bit of a wimp, I think, when I was younger. And I think we could jump all over here, but that's one of the things that I try to preach to, or maybe not preach, but try to pass along to parents as their riders and their, kids are coming up through GNCC or sports in general. There was a lot of kids when I was younger that showed a lot more potential than I did, just in terms of, how much they were willing to risk it. And, they might even beat me sometimes or more than I beat them. But to me, just kind of growing throughout my career, learning what it took to be one of the best. I was never the best guy. One day, as you pointed out, in a 28-year professional career. But I think for me, when you talk about that one win, yes, I raced professionally for 28 seasons and only ever won one overall. I won a ton of races in different series and all over the world, but GNCC is the best, at least for ATV racing. There is no question that the GNCC pros are the best ATV off-road racers in the world by a pretty wide margin, and I don't say that with any disrespect, but we've seen riders from GNCC travel all over the world and dominate other disciplines. It's just the best of the best, and I was close many times on the podium many times, but to get it done and be, as my dad used to say, the baddest man on the track, the fact that I did that once, to me, is I don't want to say it's more than enough. I would have loved to have done it more often, but let some opportunities slip through my fingers. But sometimes you got to just stay the course and keep putting yourself in position. And that day in Indiana, it just worked out, and got to battle one of my best friends for the win, and ultimately ruin what would have been the only perfect season in GNCC history. Walker Fowler, 7-time champion in the series and the all-time wins leader. No one has won on 2 wheels or 4. No one has ever won more races in GNCC than Walker Fowler. He currently sits at 79 wins, and he would have 80 if I didn't beat him that day, and he would have had a perfect season, which would have been the only perfect season ever in GNCC, to win 13 out of 13, and I had, just barely got him by just a couple seconds, and it was a battle right down to the finish line. So yeah, that win, obviously a great day for me, and something I can remember, a really cool trophy, a cool accomplishment, but to me, as cheesy as it sounds, it wasn't my best ride ever, and it wasn't the day that I feel like really defines my career. It was just all the pieces fell into place. It was a track that suited my style. It was conditions that were favorable to me. I made good decisions, and I put myself in the right position. On the last lap, I was able to make the pass for the win. But throughout my career, there's a lot of other races to me that I felt like meant more, that I rode better, and kind of more define me as an athlete and my career as the body of my career.
There's a lot of things I want to talk about. I want to get to injuries. I want to get to this. I want to get to that. But I want to hammer this while we're here. How many people would have kept going after that? How many people are searching for that step, and they try so hard, and then they never get there, and they just turn around, and they quit, and they go away? How many people would have quit long before you did? And I think the answer to that is just about everybody.
Well, I can frame that a little differently. I wasn't still racing, chasing a win. I was still racing in 2017 when I won that, because I still loved racing. In my life, I'd never found anything that I enjoyed as much, that brought me as much sense of accomplishment, sense of identity, and just kind of got me out of bed in the morning. I loved racing. I had since, like I said, I was, even before I started racing when I was 5, I loved racing. I walked around as a little kid. I only wanted to wear shirts that had numbers on them, because I called them race shirts. Apparently, I don't remember any of this, obviously, but every day I had to wear a race shirt. So my mom, my aunts, my dad, anytime they were out, they saw a number that had shirts on, a shirt that had numbers on it. It didn't matter if, it didn't matter what it was. It could be a soccer jersey, whatever. They would buy it, and they would tell me it was a race shirt. And I had to wear a race shirt every day. My dad, was consumed by racing, loved it. He was just a competitive person, loved adrenaline. And, you grow up in that environment, there's a good chance that you're going to catch the bug. So I was racing in 2017 and through 2022 because it's what I wanted to do. It wasn't really about chasing that win, or even chasing, without sounding kind of narcissistic. At that point, I felt like I'd done what I was going to do. And even prior to 2017, I really don't feel like I had any delusions of grandeur and like, hey, I'm going to come out and win races and win a championship. I think kind of the catalyst for that season was a whole bunch of factors I'd never anticipated. We can talk about people, a lot of people listening won't know, but are icons in the sport. People I'd befriended over the years, and just some people got under my skin that year coming into 2017, and I was a consistent figure in the top 10 at that point, both per race and season end. More years than not, I would finish either right inside or right around the top 10 overall, which, as you know, is quite an accomplishment. I mean, you have to be one of the best in the world to be able to do that.
Absolutely.
But I definitely wasn't singularly focused on that at that point. I think I was kind of developing the understanding that I couldn't race forever. I was racing for a living, but there was a lot of opportunities coming my way in the industry as far as what I'm doing now, brand ambassador, brand manager. A lot of companies that I had developed relationships with saw more value in me as someone who could help them develop new products, guide their brands, and really connect with their customers, rather than just on track. And I mean, going back to, my first planned retirement was in 2005. I just wasn't.
Wow. Like, tell everyone when you said 2022 was your actual retirement.
Yeah, so I went another 17 years. It was a little longer than anticipated. But I kind of found the fun again once I stopped obsessing about the results, and I went through some, I don't want to say dark days, because it wasn't that serious, man. It's racing ATVs. But when it's your life and, you as a young rider, you're kind of touted as the next big thing, and then you go so long without winning a championship. Yes, you're one of the top riders, but you kind of just fall into this lull of, I guess this is the best I'm ever going to be. And then, I don't know how much time we have on this, but basically surrounding myself with people not by design that just really kind of got under my skin and made me want to be better. Caleb Russell, one of those people. I've been friends with him for many years, but kind of got closer in that 2015, 16, 17 era. Becca Sheets, who was a multi-time WXC Women's Pro champion, she had kind of really developed into her own and was having a lot of success. And, just seeing the habits and the drive and the work ethic that it took for them. And, even prior to that, I have to give it, a shout out to 9-time champion Bill Balance, was a good friend of mine. And through those years, I saw what it took for him to win. And to be frank, like, I wasn't ready to do that. I mean, it wasn't just the on track. I mean, he was the type of guy, maybe over dramatic a little bit, but would die to win a race. Like, he would do anything to win a race. He was a classy rider, a clean rider, rode everybody clean, was fair, but he had this intensity that was kind of next level. And then, spent many years living and training with Chris Borich, a 6-time GNCC champion. So I was surrounded by some of the best throughout that, era before that in my career, but was just really never willing to take that next step and give up everything else. I enjoyed life. I, maybe had a little bit too much fun. Didn't dedicate myself to, even though it was my job, I definitely didn't put myself all in as far as training, riding. It was kind of like, well, this is good enough. I'm earning a living, and I'm here. People respect me. I'm one of the best, and that was I was okay with that. Yeah. And then I think coming into even going back to like 2013, I think I had a couple podiums, had some good rides, and kind of started thinking like, man, if I would work a little bit harder, I might be able to, I really wasn't even thinking of a win, to be honest with you. It was more just, I think I could get some more top fives, I could get some more podiums, and frankly, make more money. They pay us bonuses for podiums, they pay us bonuses for wins. We get season-ending bonuses based on where you finish in the points. And I was like, oh man, there's a lot of money I'm leaving on the table. I'm doing okay. I'm getting by. I'm making a decent living, but there's more money to be had here, and started training a little bit more and more seriously. And I don't want to slight anyone. There was a lot of other people. I mean, Brandon Summers, Lazarus Summers, Taylor Kaiser, Tracy Pickens, so many people that were very successful, were close friends of mine, and seeing what they were doing, it just kind of inspired me to try to be a little better. But that's a long process when you've had at that point already, so in 2013, I'd already had a 20-year, about a 15, 17 year pro career at that point. So you're kind of set in your ways. So by the time we fast forward, had some good rides through 13, 14, 15, 16, and coming into 2017 was just spending a lot more time with Caleb. And how do I say this? He's a bit of an abrasive personality. And I mean that with all the respect in the world. We were just talking coming into round one, and he basically said, what are your goals for the year? And I told him, I'd like to try to get a top 10 for the year, because at that point I was 39 years old, almost 40, and I thought that was a good goal. And I think I was number 13 coming into that year, and had an injury the year before and finished a little worse than what I had been finishing in prior years. And I said I'd like to get back in the top 10, and I don't remember the exact answer, but it was something along the lines of, that's what I would expect from you, is to set a goal that is super easy to obtain so you don't have to work hard to try to earn it. And it was kind of like a gut punch, and it was an eye-opening moment. And the other thing he said is a goal is just a dream until you write it down, and it becomes a goal then. And so he not forced me, but encouraged me to write down some goals, and I did, and I brought them back to him and showed them to him, and he just laughed and said, so you want to try to finish in the top 5 a few races, like you've done dozens, if not, more, several dozen times in your career? And I was like, yeah, but I'm 39. And he's like, well, why don't you set your goals a little higher? And I'm going to be honest, didn't have a win on the goals that year, but I think I set goals to lead laps. I think I set a goal of a few podiums that year, which I didn't really think were attainable. And when it was all said and done, at the end of 2017, had a couple podiums, had a win, had led a bunch of laps. But the work that went into it on the backside isn't what nobody sees. I mean, I would think when I came down to Florida to start training for the 2017 season, I think I was around 200 pounds. My winter weight had fully been established, and I think I went to round one that year at like 171 pounds. So I lost 30 pounds in a month and a half. Was training like an animal, riding every day, and just the confidence that came with that. When it came time to go racing, felt better, had better finishes, and it really kind of changed my outlook, not just on racing, but on life. If you want something, you've got to be willing to work for it. I think I kind of got by throughout the first near 40 years of my life on just natural ability and the dimple, and just kind of smiled and said the right things, and I would get by. And some people in my life pointed out that if you want more, you got to be willing to put more work in. So I've kind of lived by that philosophy ever since.
And this was in the 30s of your racing career and the upper teens, almost 20s of your professional career.
Yeah, I mean, 2017 would have been my 21st year, actually, of my professional career.
So, and I think you said it before, most people, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and here you are learning in year 20. And I just think that says a lot about who you are and where you were at in that time period. And then you allowed coaching from your circle, and you listened to it and you applied it, and what happened? The results followed.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, especially when someone like Caleb, or many years earlier Lazarus Summers, that owned GT Thunder, had pointed out, like, hey, you're not putting in the effort. And he said it in a nice way, but you're not putting in the effort. You're just kind of gliding by. Why don't you just retire from racing and work in the industry? Come to work for me. Help me build my brand. And there were some good offers there, but there was just always this sense of, have I done all I can do? Have I ever really given it my best effort? I could say I did when I was younger, but you just don't know enough to know what you're supposed to be doing. You think you're doing enough, you think you're doing it right, and then as you get older, you realize the mistakes you made along the way, you realize what more you could have done, how you could have done things differently. And I think from that time in like 2005 when I was considering retiring and just working in the industry through 2017, so another 12 years, it took a long time of figuring out where I fit into this system and where my value was, both to my sponsors and what made me happy. But when it came right down to it, those few years that I was considering retiring in that era, like, I knew I hadn't done enough. I knew I hadn't ever put my best foot forward and given it everything I had to give. And I felt like I was leaving something on the table. And to do something for 20 years and at an elite level and say that you never tried as hard as you could try, I think it's a bit of an embarrassment, but yeah. I own it now. So yeah, coming into the 2017 season and even into 18 and 19 and 2020, I was turning myself inside out and doing everything I could do to be the best I could be, and the results showed that. So I think that was what kind of took that weight off my chest when I decided to retire at the end of 2022. And I think maybe why I have a little bit different perspective than a lot of people who race their whole careers, and when they retire, they feel, in most cases, it seems like guys are either pushed out because they don't have a ride, need to move on with life, whether it be having families, kids, starting a business, whatever, or their bodies just give up on them. Injuries, that kind of stuff. And for me, coming into 2022, I just knew it was time. I didn't have anything left to give. I'd given everything I had, and I had, if there was an opportunity for me to have success on track or off, that opportunity had come. But just wanted to race one more year, just kind of say goodbye to the fans, which I knew I would continue to be around. And I think optimistically hoped maybe there was a couple good rides left in there. There wasn't. I mean, there was some good rides, but no exceptional results that final season. It was just kind of, but no, I think 17, 18, 19, and 2020 pre-COVID, that was the most effort I ever put in. That was the best I've ever been. And to say that at age 39, 40, 41, and 42, in the sport we live in, where, we see standout performers from age 16 to maybe 25. I mean, we've definitely had some champions well into their 30s, but they were probably already winning races, in their early to mid 20s. Pretty proud of that.
Yeah, I think it speaks numbers on who you are as like a person and how you're able to adapt and get to that point. One thing I want to circle back to, and then I want to move on. You hit the nail on the head, man. Like, you were doing what you loved and you didn't want to stop doing that. And that's okay. That's beautiful almost. There's a lot of people out there that, first of all, they don't get to do what they love. They've never had the gumption to go out and chase that. And then there's a lot of people that I know that had what they loved, and then the grass was always greener, or, they're going to move on to something else, and they might have left that space a little too early, and it turns into a massive regret for them. And you rode that out. And, I think there's a lot to learn from that. Go ahead.
Yeah. I don't know if, obviously this podcast, I believe, is about success and
about whatever we want it to be.
Well, no, but I mean, that's my understanding, obviously, of kind of the messaging here. And I think for me, success is a relative term. It's what are you looking for? What makes you happy, and what do you define as success? For some people, it's money. For some people, it's athletic achievement. It's for some people, it's just this level of happiness and fulfillment. And I think for most of us, it's kind of a combination or a running calculation of all those things and so many more. But for me, when you talk about doing something you love, when I was young, it was all I wanted to do. And I can remember being very young and saying, I want to race an ATV for, my career. And people would laugh at me, including my dad. And he meant it with all the respect. And he was just trying to give me perspective, because at the time, there was no such thing as there was professional ATV racers, but they didn't make a living. They all had, either 9-to-5 jobs or own businesses or had other sources of income, and racing was a hobby for them. They might receive some endorsement deals, small deals, win a little money at the races, but it wasn't enough to, it wasn't a full-time income. It realistically, in most cases, it didn't even pay for itself because racing is obviously incredibly expensive. But I was fortunate to come along in a time where the sport was on a boom, and there was a lot of companies that were wanting to advertise their ATVs, their clothing, their goggles, their tires, their lubricants, all of the products that go along with racing. There was a business there. Like, you could make money endorsing those products and helping them develop products, and again, bring them to market and connect with their customers. And I think that's where I shined. But I think one thing that sticks out to me when you talk about kind of barriers to entry, when I was in high school, I remember my guidance counselor, which I did go to college, basically asking me what my career plan was. And also my wrestling coach in 9th grade, when I was wrestling, essentially telling me, like, hey, you can't keep going to these races, you're missing practices. And I told myself, well, no, this is what I'm going to do for my career. I have had the opportunity to see that wrestling coach probably 10 years ago or so. And it was a very kind of full circle aha moment for him. And it was very gratifying for me because he basically put me in a position where he said, hey, you have to quit wrestling if you're going to keep racing. I said, well, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to race for a living. And he kind of laughed at me and said, wrestling, you could get yourself a college scholarship. And I was a decent wrestler. I probably wasn't good enough to get a scholarship realistically. But, he was doing what he thought was the right thing at the time and saying, you need to focus on a more traditional career. 20 some odd years later, ran into him. And he's like, hey, man, I watch on TV all the time. And from my understanding, you've made a 20-plus year career out of this, doing what you love to do. And that's awesome. And for me, it was just, I always knew it would work out. I knew I was willing to put in the work to make it work, and
Here we are. Yeah, that's confidence in yourself, your abilities, who you are. That's a lot of good stuff, man. I want to move kind of over to like the physical side of it. How have you kept your body in a state that is capable of competition? And then, along that same line, I know you've had some injuries. I want to know, like, the hardest recovery you've had, the hardest comeback, and how you got through that.
Is it wrong of me to say they all run together?
No.
I've been fortunate over my career. I've definitely had a lot of broken bones. I've had surgeries. But I've been fortunate. I've never had the big one. I've never had anything where I was really down and out for very long, which I think, if I remember correctly, I think my professional career spanned something like 338 races or something like that, give or take. And I think I only missed 3 along the way.
What I said earlier, durable.
Yeah. And there, don't get me wrong, of those 338 races, I probably rode 300 of them injured. To some degree. Like what the average person would consider an injury, we just consider the cost of doing business. Yeah. You're always riding with, not always, but there's large spans of your season career where you're riding with nagging injuries. You hit the ground in practice, you're training throughout the week. There's always strains, there's always tears, there's always dislocations and fractures, and I haven't had an ACL in my right knee since 1999. Still don't. Chose to not get it fixed because in 1999 I didn't think I would race that much longer, so I figured I'd get it fixed a couple years longer or later. Let's
spell that out for everyone right there. You raced without an ACL for 23 years. You said it was 99 and you retired in 23. That's without an ACL for 23 years.
Yeah, it was a complete tear. I was racing motocross at the time, and Redbud, which is this weekend. I won a moto in the Pro-Am class at Redbud on Saturday, won the heat race, and when I jumped the finish line, they had watered the face. It was my fault, but the last lap, they had watered the face prepping for the next moto. I misjudged the speed and overshot the landing, and when I landed, I hyperextended my right leg and blew my femur out over top of my tib fib on the landing. Didn't crash or anything, just the way I landed. Complete tear of the ACL. Had a vertical fracture through my tib fib, and I forget what degree, 4th degree bone contusion in my femur. Never missed a race for that one. Luckily, it was during the summer break from GNCC, and I was able to come back and race. But yeah, in the process of evaluating surgery, that was 1999. Travis Pastrana was big in the freestyle, X Games kind of thing. And the night before my surgery was scheduled, I got a call from my surgeon, and he had watched Travis Pastrana from X Games, and basically said, "Hey, is this what you do?" He wasn't a motorsports guy. He did some work for the soccer team in Cleveland. He was an athlete, or an athletic orthopedic, worked on athletes. But he was like, the impact that we're looking at here is just off the charts. He said, I really would advise that if you're going to continue doing stuff like this, we not repair this right now. He said, how long do you plan on racing for? And I said, a few more years. And he was like, yeah, at this point, like, either your options are to get this repaired and take 8 to 12, potentially 16 months off, which as a 20-year-old kid, 21-year-old kid, I was not going to do. He said, or if you're only going to race for a few more years, he was very honest. He said, I can't promise that you're not going to do more damage, but it may be a better choice in the long run and get it fixed. Well, by the time I retired in 2022, there's not much left of that knee. It's just kind of, loose. Cartilage is gone. All the other ligaments have since torn. It's pretty much bone on bone, and I deal with it. I'm not a tough guy. It's just part of my life. Like, I get injured more now getting out of bed, walking up and down stairs, stepping out of a truck, stepping off a curb. Ice, that's why I don't spend winters in Ohio. I don't walk well on the ice, but I'm going to get around. I still cycle, I still run, I still work out. You just kind of learn the limitations of your body and the damage that you've done to it over the years. But as far as the worst injury, I would say, as stupid as it sounds, there's a lot of injuries you have along the way that just become nagging. And I think it was 2012, I had a crash in an FTR race. Myself and Jared McClure got together in a field, and I believe his handlebars went through my ribs, or into my ribs. Luckily, I was wearing a chest protector, but I had what was called a costochondroidal separation, where it tore the cartilage off my rib cage. And I dealt with that. I was in 2012, and still in 2017, I would have issues with that. So that was 5 years of, but it's just, it's a nagging injury, man. Every time you crash, every time you, the bars get jerked just the wrong way, it would pop. And I would say that was the longest recovery. It doesn't bother me anymore. It's gotten a lot better since I stopped racing. I don't have, like I said, now my injuries are stepping out of bed, or I sleep on the wrong side of the pillow or something like that. But I actually feel really good day to day compared to what I did when I was racing full time.
Yeah, that's part of that's a huge reason why I look up to you guys. You're so tough and gritty, and you talk about you've been living, like, I just keep going back to it, but you've been living without an ACL since the 90s, and you are still more mobile, more active, more driven than 90% of the country's population, and it's just a part of who you are now, and I just think that's so badass. A lot of these could be career-ending excuses for just about anybody. I mean, or an excuse to not go to work, for take a bunch of time off to nurse their injury, and you guys ride with broken legs. That's insane to me. Compete with broken legs, and again, it just speaks to who you are and the cloth you're cut from, and it's impressive, man. It's something that I look up to.
Griff, and this might be the soundbite from this podcast. Maybe not. Most people's limitations are in their own minds, whether that be, physical, mental, professional, personal, emotional. Everybody controls their own destiny, man. We are all a product of the decisions we make and the actions we choose. I loved racing. I was willing to ride through pain. You say it's awesome. You say it's inspiring. You know, you say it's toughness. I would argue to some degree it's stupidity.
Okay.
Well, I mean, professional athletes at any level, specifically motorsports athletes, and I'm sure it's the same in football, soccer, baseball, triathletes, whatever. When you get to that elite level, you have to become a bit of a narcissist. You have to think that the world revolves around you. You have to think you're indestructible. You have to think that you're unbeatable. You have to think that you're the greatest that's ever been if you want to succeed. I was never good at that. I think I was too well adjusted of a normal human, and I understood my place in racing and in life, and I'm just a regular guy who was afforded some really cool opportunities and loved what I did. But there's moments where you have to adapt those qualities. And I think I raced 7 days after a collarbone surgery. Raced with broken foot, ankle, fingers, hands, wrists, dislocated thumbs, more times in my career than I could count, but it just becomes what you do. Looking back on it now, would I recommend that a 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old kid make those decisions that I made? No. It's definitely taken its toll on my body, but it also made me into the person that I am today, and I'm pretty okay with that person. Like, sometimes in life you have to do the hard things to make yourself understand that, again, most of those limitations that you see as barriers in your life are in your own mind. Sure, like if you're seriously injured and it's causing medical issues, you need to have that addressed. But if it's just pain, you can put that out of your mind. Like, you can do it.
Huh. Good stuff, man. I want to transition real quick. How long you been with? How long were you? Let's see. I don't want to ask. How long is your relationship with Yamaha right now? Even back to when you were a rider.
My relationship probably started through Bill Balance. He was a good friend of mine. Started riding for or working with Yamaha when they released the 2004 YFZ 450. He ended up racing that in 2004. I met some people from Yamaha through him. He was a good friend of mine. I actually raced the Yamaha YFZ 450 at the 12 Hours of ATV America out in Iowa with Bill and his brother Brandon in 2003, I believe that would have been, because it came out in like August of 03, even though it was an 04 model. We were one of the first people to race that machine. Bill went out, bought one from a local dealer. We had some parts made for it, went out and raced, and I think we finished second that year. But loved the machine. It was, revolutionary machine at the time, and met some of the people from Yamaha. They reached out. Bill ended up getting a factory ride with them right away for the 2004 season. His brother Brandon also raced Yamaha. At the time, I had a relationship with Jeff Cernick, who was a Honda and Suzuki dealer. He was helping me out a ton. So 04 and 05, 04 I was on Suzuki's, 05, 06 I rode Hondas, and then in 2007 Jeff Cernick bought a Yamaha dealership, and that was when my official relationship with Yamaha started. I mean, I knew the guys, I'd worked with them, with Bill, Tracy Pickens, who I was helping out at the time. I knew them all, but my relationship with Cernick was so strong. He wasn't a Yamaha dealer, and I wasn't going to race anything that he didn't sell. And then in 07 when he bought that Yamaha dealership. So 2007 to current, so 19 years.
Yeah, going on 20 years.
Yep.
The reason I ask, and you kind of got at this earlier, you kind of reinvented yourself post athletic career, and now you are. And when Steve and Jennifer are at the races, you and Randy are Yamaha at the events. You are Blue Crew. Randy's, the competition side, but you literally are the face of a brand and a manufacturer at the races, and you leveraged, I would say, your career and that great relationship to get to that point. Talk a little bit about that and how that's worked so well for you, how you're able to pull that off.
I think for me, to kind of sum things up quickly, when I was young, I realized that I probably wasn't going to be the guy that won 10 championships and made a ton of money racing ATVs, but I realized quickly that I had the ability to connect with people. I was passionate about racing. I was passionate about the products that I used. I really enjoyed talking to the customers, the racers. I enjoyed working with the companies to try to help them improve their products and bring them to market in the best way possible. So I think I kind of found my niche there even before I turned it into a business. When I was still racing, I would just kind of leverage that in my racing contracts and kind of make that a part of it. Like, hey, I'll help you guys with some of this stuff. And then it just evolved from there. And I would say probably for the last at least 10 years that I was racing, more like probably 12 or more, a lot of the companies I worked with, from GBC and Greenball on the tire side, Yamaha, they basically said, hey, when you're ready to be done racing, we have opportunities for you as a brand ambassador, or even, internal positions within the company where we feel like we can utilize your knowledge. So I didn't really have to leverage it. I think they saw it, and I was just fortunate enough when I was ready to retire in 2022 that Yamaha made room for me as a brand ambassador and saw value in me, and the same with Greenball and GBC and Canati. I'd worked with them since 2009. I'd worked with Yamaha officially since 2007. And to be able to continue with those relationships was, it worked out.
No brainer. Yeah. We got to start wrapping things up. But the last real thing that I want to get at, and I want to highlight for people, and I don't know if I told you, but the reason we're doing this show is because I am in a spot. It's a new place for me. It's a new setting. It's a new arena for me to compete in. And I'm figuring it out as I go, right? I haven't, been in a marketing role for, a day-to-day ever. And that's where I find myself right now. And the one of the smartest things I thought I could do is call the people in my life, some of the most interesting, successful people in my life, and pick their brain. The last thing that I admire about you, and I didn't get to it last time, we mentioned the durability and the consistency, but it's your emotional intelligence, and you hit the nail on the head right there. You did not have to leverage your career to fill these positions, because you had that relationship with them. They saw something in you, and it was a natural transition to get to where you're at today. And I don't know if I've met anyone before that is as emotionally intelligent as you are. You understand who you are. You understand your limitations. You care about people. You know how to talk to certain people. And that's something that I want to take with me moving forward. And it's something that it comes off as so natural to you. I consider myself a fairly emotional, intelligent person, but I haven't always been. I've had to learn it. It's had to be beat into me, and I've had to take my experiences and kind of adapt that as time goes on. You ask Jeff Russell, I'm too nice. I don't know how to really come down on people, and I'm working on that to stand a firm line. Talk a little bit about that. Was that a process for you? Did you have to figure out who you are? Because, man, that to me, when I'm describing Johnny Gallagher, you're such a good guy. You're very intelligent about racing, but you're also as or more intelligent about relationships and maintaining them. Because and that's highlighted across your whole career, 20+ year relationships all over the place, and it's something worth examining.
Yeah, I think to sum it up as quickly as I can, for me, self-awareness and finding your value to someone else and their value to you, and making it a mutually beneficial relationship, is what makes the world go round in business. I've always tried to structure things in such a way that I felt like I wasn't. That's why the word leveraging kind of, and I know you didn't mean it in a bad way, but I try to avoid that. I try to build value, and then when someone sees that value, if they choose to compensate me or provide me with an additional opportunity because of that, that's great for me and it's great for them. But I think the biggest thing that I can say is kind of like a little bit what we talked about before this podcast. I think off-road racing, GNCC, is a system politics are a system, the world is a system. And I think if I have one skill set in the world that I've developed or was born with, I don't know where it came from. It's my ability to recognize a system and figure out where I fit into it and where I can benefit that system overall and also create value and benefit myself within that system. I think one of the biggest challenges for people is understanding that you can have all the great ideas and be the smartest person in the world with great ideas and tons of drive, but if you don't have the ability to convey your message and not make people, but afford people the proper opportunity to understand what you're saying and why it makes sense and why it brings value to them, then if your communication method sucks, then it doesn't matter what your message that you're trying to deliver is. And for me, that came growing up from my dad. My dad was a smart guy, was very successful, but he was far too emotional when it came to that kind of stuff. He would fly off the handle. And I love my dad, and he was never anything crazy. But to me, like, I would see so many times through life, like, man, he's right, but he's just going about this all wrong. He's way too passionate. He's way too stomping his feet. He's too loud. So to me, if you want to get something done, figure out the best path to making it make sense. And that, I think, is what I've focused my career on. I think I take some criticism sometimes for being a yes man, or not being outspoken enough about certain things. But to me, there's a value in letting things work themselves out and figuring out when is the best time to attack and address the problem, the system, the potential improvement or change. And I think it's just recognizing that and figuring out the best way to go about it that is truly beneficial for all involved.
Man, really good stuff. Really good stuff. And unfortunately we're running out of time. We're like right around that hour mark. That's where I wanted to be. I feel like because of who you are and who I am and our relationship, we could sit here and talk for hours. Might have to get you on for another episode one day, but
absolutely would love to do it.
Guest number one, I've had a heck of a time, man. It's an honor to have you on here. Again, this is One Call with Griff. Can't say thank you enough, Johnny.
Thank you very much for having me on. Would love to do it again in the future, and definitely will be tuning into these in the future because I know you'll have some great guests and there'll be a lot of knowledge and entertainment along the way, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yep. Thanks again. And he's right. We got some good guests coming up. We'll be back next week. Maybe a little some teasers coming on who we'll have on the show next week. But until then, I'm Griff. This is Johnny. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. And